welcome to Lawline with your host, David Schnerman, an accomplished entrepreneur, attorney, and legal educator. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law, business, and education. And now we introduce our guest and our host, David Schnerman.
Welcome to Lawline. The threatened budget cuts in public education will lead to massive teacher layoffs. Today we will look at the effect the cuts will have on students, teachers, and the unions. Our guests are Bryan Glass, former attorney for New York State's teachers union and practicing privately representing teachers, Betsy Combier, New York City Rubber Room reporter and founder of ParentAdvocates.org, and Michael Mazzariello, former prosecutor of the New York City Board of Education. Hello, Bryan, Betsy, and Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. As we discussed in the intro, the costs are getting up in education. There's clearly a lot of issues going on right now between costs and issues with poor education. And a hot button topic right now, obviously, is teacher tenure. Betsy, is that the issue? Is that the problem, teacher tenure? Will solving that solve the education system?
Well, the process of getting teachers out of a classroom because of tenure is completely broken, and it's a mind-boggling expense for everybody concerned. The arbitrators are getting a lot of money for what is called the teacher trial, which is a 30-20, and they're getting thousands of dollars to decide cases, and they're not that quick. Some last 8 months, some last 7 months, 6 months, bringing in discovery or not, and it's a major expense. So if you look at just the 30-20, the process is broken because we don't know who is being brought into the 30-20, because principals are saying things about teachers that oftentimes aren't true. So the whole process needs to be redone from the very beginning and say, look, if you did something, if you're a bad teacher, let's move you out of the system. If you're a good teacher, let's keep you.
But the bigger question is teacher tenure in general. The mayor and there's a lot of people who want to just remove it and get rid of it, not necessarily because of the removal process, just because it's not beneficial to the students. Bryan, why was tenure originally started, and is that still the main focus of it? Does it still need to be for that same reason?
Well, I think it was considered a good thing when it started. I think this happened many, many years ago, and it was considered from arbitrary abuse of especially women, a lot of women in the profession. I think tenure was created legislatively. It was considered to give you some sense of protection when you pass 3 years, you would have some kind of security in the profession. And I think that notion held for a long time. I think now, from what I'm perceiving in the last 10 years, it's really under attack. And you've seen it in Wisconsin and other states. But in New York City, there's still this myth out there that tenure protects teachers, that they have this lifetime job. And the reality I've seen in the last few years is that's completely untrue right now. I saw Betsy on Fox News, and it's impossible to get rid of a tenured teacher. That's not the case at all anymore.
It's the most ridiculous thing
and the slide since Mayor Bloomberg has taken over has been tremendous as far as the weakening of the tenure rights. So.
But Michael, it's
totally absurd. It's absolutely absurd. The crisis that's happening in the education field right now and the attack on teachers, the attack is not being generated where it should be generated, and that is with the assistant principals, the principals, the deputy superintendents, and the superintendents. And you have to define what kind of teacher we're talking about. Are we talking about a teacher that's excessively late, a teacher that's been busted for drugs, a teacher that's a pervert, a pedophile, or an incompetent? You have to define that. 30-20 is not broken, it's just not implemented, and it's not implemented because there's a lot of people making a lot of money off the system. I never had a problem terminating a tenured teacher, so I don't know where you come off saying that. I don't know what you said on Fox, and I really don't care, but if you give me the documentation, and I will demand the required time dictated by 30-20A in New York State, what's the problem? It can be tweaked, but it's certainly not broken.
Michael, you can't say that it's not. Certainly it's harder to get rid of a teacher who is tenured than if there wasn't a tenure system.
The whole idea of tenure was
Correct?
to protect my rights as a worker. So I come in as a new principal, I don't like the way you look. I don't like your breath. I don't like your teaching methodology. You're terminated. That's what happened.
So originally, free speech. So if you say something that's against the school's policy.
Not only free speech, but an expression of being able to teach and elicit ideas and compel your students to think and to go out there and be independent thinkers and not have to worry about some schmuck coming in here and worrying about classroom management and whether or not I have the appropriate lesson plan on the wall. I mean, it really is an ideal that is under attack, and I think it's being attacked with teachers be taking the brunt of it, with the administrators not, and they're the ones that are actually responsible for it. Because if you came to me as the Chief Prosecutor for the New York City Board of Ed, and you said, Maz, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I got a teacher, she's incompetent, and I look at all of the end of annual performance evaluations, and they all say S, 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 I would say, what do you want me to do?
See, but that's completely changed now, because in the last year, the Board of Ed has created a whole new unit called this incompetency unit that specially hears these cases, and that teacher is gone now. I see this teacher every day coming into my office, a 15-year teacher, SSSSS. Well, the board says this person's very expensive, the principal has got a lot of power now, and they say, I want this person gone. So what they do is they follow a script that's been developed by the Board of Ed.
2 consecutive years.
2 consecutive years, and this is going to be adopted statewide. This has just started in New York City, but you can get rid of a 15-year teacher who's had a perfect career now in 2 years, and less than 2 years sometimes. And the success rate they're having in 3020A, the Board of Ed in the last year, is about 90%. So it's almost automatic. If you want to target someone, you want to get someone. That's why I say tenure has been emasculated, because it doesn't really exist anymore.
Well, 2 consecutive year ratings, 2 consecutive year. Yes, I was in Albany 2 weeks ago. I heard it live. 2 consecutive ratings, and then you are entitled to an appeal process.
A presumption, right?
Before we get down to the meat of it, just a bigger question. Just because it's always been done a certain way, obviously change is always hard. Is tenure necessary?
I say yes, absolutely.
And I'm a parent. I have 4 children. They were lucky enough to have some excellent teachers. If we say, no, you can't have tenure, then the vagaries of a principal just saying, well, I don't like you, out, and they trump up charges, that teacher is gone, and you have to build on a curriculum. You have to have, a lesson plan that goes for a year. If you're studying English, you have to know what happened the day before. Instead of being replaced, and all of a sudden there's a new teacher who doesn't know what's being taught, that's bad for kids. So tenure is good for kids.
Certainly there is obviously parts that are not good about tenure. Would you agree with that, Michael?
The 3020A process needs about 5 little tweaks to make it more efficient. Look, right now the law says 6 months. 6 months it should take. That's it. Why isn't it done? Why isn't it being done in 6 months? Why aren't the districts following the law? Why aren't the arbitrators who make over $1,100 a day plus expenses following the law? Because it's become a cottage industry. The longer it goes, the better it goes. When I became the boss, I said, look, the law says consecutive days. I want consecutive days. You can't tell me it takes longer to do a homicide than terminate a teacher that's been late 80 days out of 180. These are trials.
How long does a termination take?
Well, but it's much
depends
quicker
on what. It depends on what they're charged with.
The new agreement says 60 days is what an arbitrator has.
Is the fear really, though, if there's no tenure, that all of a sudden principals are going to start arbitrarily firing people because of emotions?
Absolutely.
Scores. We're score generated.
Absolutely.
It's all going to be based on scores.
But the first 3 years before there's tenure, there is some sort of merit-based system
That's what I said at the beginning. Where are the administrators
you raise a really good point. I'm not so sure tenure is actually helping a lot of teachers right now. I mean, there's a flood of probationary teachers who reach that 3rd year who are arbitrarily being discontinued because the board is so afraid of tenuring people and getting into this process. And so what's been happening is they've been extending these 4 years, 4th year and out. What this is causing is a very young teaching force, and in this economy they could always bring in new teachers. What I think you're going to see in the next few years is very few tenured teachers, or they're going to be kind of weeding out of the system. It's going to be a 3 and out system, really, 3 or 4 and out.
And nobody wanting to be a teacher because it is so arbitrary that you could just lose your job. And I handle hundreds, if not thousands, of those cases where a new principal comes in, doesn't like a particular teacher's methodology, and goes after them.
So Michael, what you're bringing up to me is, so tenure is one small area, which is a very interesting area because there's, I think, a lot of arguments for and against, and there's a lot of valid points, just as in law. There's both sides to every position, but there's a bigger issue in the education system. If the fear is that if there's no tenure, there's that arbitrarily being fired for whatever reason, and because of tenure, you can be fired in the 3-year period. What is the bigger overall issues we have in our education system that you would say, Michael, are the things to look at right now to what's in the best interest of the students? And Betsy, I want to hear from you on that as well.
I think that the money needs to be generated in the socioeconomic areas and neighborhoods that need it, because if you're going to start basing teacher tenure and their assessment on tests and evaluations, then you're going to have to go to areas like the East New York section of Brooklyn, where you have single-family households, no income, no one's doing homework, nobody's reading or writing, kids are out to 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you go to the wealthier neighborhoods like District 2 in Manhattan. And now the governor and the legislator and all the state senators need to tell me how you do that comparative analysis. I think the money needs to be evenly distributed, and I think they need to come up with an evaluation system that's fair to all parties involved, because you can't have students like Governor Christie in New Jersey wants saying, oh, my teacher's the best teacher in the world. She's the best teacher in the world. It just won't work.
Betsy, does money solve the problem? If you throw money at a broken system, will it make any difference?
No, it won't solve the problem. I have something that I would suggest, that the evaluation of teachers, we're in the 21st century. We have video, we have mobile cameras, we have tape recorders, we have things. If you send in somebody to tape record an evaluation observation.
Union wouldn't let me bring in the tape recorder.
Well, that's got to change.
That was the problem. You're telling me the teacher's incompetent. I went out, I was a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor, and I said, okay, if this teacher's incompetent, I want to go watch. And I would say, okay, I want to go watch, and I'll bring a videotape. The union said, no way, that's against the rules and regulations. They would not allow me into that classroom.
You mentioned the union, a very powerful union.
Yeah, extremely powerful, and I'm pro-union.
So a union, the change is, everyone's resistant to change because change, there's risk. It seems like the union's goal is to keep things as is.
It's sort of like the NRA. They're afraid that if you give them a little, they're going to take even more. If you give them a little, my point to you is this. I never had a problem terminating a tenured teacher as long as you did your job as a principal, assistant principal, deputy superintendent, and superintendent. Period. End of story. Never had a problem.
Is there any
within a very quick time frame?
There could also be the issue, Bryan, I don't know if you see this, you represent teachers, where assistant principals or principals don't even go down the route to try to terminate a teacher because there is a lot of paperwork. And so there's a
what do you mean? Oh, they have to do informal observations, go out and fill out. Oh my God, that's so much work. They're making $85,000, $100,000.
So things have changed that much
right, I mean, they have to do 3 informals.
They don't mind doing that if that's
3 formal observations. You know what those are? That's where the principal goes in and says, you did a good job. You put the aim, the objective, the goal, you covered the where, you had good class management. Oh, that's not even being done. This is what Christie and everyone in Wisconsin doesn't understand, that management is the one that allowed that teacher to become incompetent.
Well, I think the system's changed a lot since Mike was there, though. I mean,
I'm still trying cases. Listen, I'm still trying cases.
You're talking about the union. The union has severely compromised on a lot of these protections, which I think is coming back to bite them. I think my impression was they got some really good money under Bloomberg early in his administration, and what happened is they gave away a lot of the panel, for example. It used to be that when you were a tenured teacher, your attorney, your individual attorney, would have a selection of selecting your arbitrator, and that arbitrator is controlling the teacher's fate, and it still exists outside of New York City. It's a completely different system in New York City and New York State. It's a completely different dichotomy. It's filtering over to New York State, but the power of NYSET outside New York City is extremely much greater than in New York City. Because in New York City, what happens is some administrator within NYSET assigns you to a rotational panel, and your fate is going to be dependent on this person. And in New York City especially, they've bumped the number of arbitrators with all this political pressure to about 30 arbitrators, many who are brand new, who've never arbitrated before. It used to be the panel was considered sterling, they had these very top arbitrators, but now the panel has been increased to all these new people that you don't know anything about them. And if you're a teacher and your fate rests in this person, it's almost arbitrary who you get assigned to in the system. You can end up with.
I couldn't disagree with you anymore. Listen, this is a trial. If you're going to say it, just say what it is. The 3028 is a trial. Everyone makes it a trial. You need litigators. You need people that know how to litigate. I came from the Brooklyn
I think it's all the
District
decision maker, honestly. And I can
Well,
tell you, I've
listen.
had cases, let me just tell you that, I've had cases
the
that...
decision makers make the decision, right? Who are you to argue with them? It's like a jury. You made your decision, and I'm not going to argue with you.
Let me tell you about
I
that.
present my best case.
Let me tell you about that, Mike.
It's
I've had
the
three teachers.
attorneys.
I've had 3 teachers in the last year get fired by arbitrators that I took to court, and 3 judges have bounced those decisions. This is unheard of. These decisions are being bounced of these new arbitrators because the judges are saying this is ridiculous. People are being fired over ridiculous things. A 15-year tenured teacher, you know, who's done the smallest little thing. I mean, and to be termination or a penalty of $20,000 is just considered by the courts as ridiculous. And they keep. And I even had the First Department Appellate Division just sustain this. A person who got fired over accusing of slapping a girl. We don't even know if it happened. The arbitrator fired her. We went to court. The court said this is ridiculous. I mean, 15 years we're going to fire this teacher. We're going to blow her whole career. We had to go to the Appellate Division. We took it up there. The Appellate Division, and it's still an
We're going to
appeal.
go tit for tat for stories. I mean, I had a high school teacher having sex with a student 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. The Special Investigation, Special Ed Standards, the Special Commission of Investigation for the New York City School District wired the girl. We had the conversation between the girl and the guy where he admits, I'm sorry, we had sex, we did it. He admitted it on tape. He admitted it. He admitted it. In a court of law, in any felony trial I've ever done, that tape comes in because I had proof of it. The girl knew him. The arbitrator came back and said we needed the girl to testify.
Mike, those people are so gone these days. Yeah, that's back in your day. You're right. The union had a lot of power. We could sometimes even try to save
That's not what I heard in Albany last week. I did not hear that in Albany last week.
Because in New York City, I'm seeing people being fired over the most ridiculous things. That's not even misconduct, and the arbitrators are either assessing gigantic penalties or terminating them. And the termination rate, I bet you, if you looked at statistics right now, is about 10 times higher than when I was at NYC and when I got to pick my own arbitrator.
You know, the funny thing you said that is I looked at the termination rate handed out by the State Department of Education for New York City compared to when I was there, and it was lower than when I was there. So maybe
how many cases did you do back then?
When
my first year at NYC, I did 2 cases the whole year. When I left NYC, I was doing about 200 cases. I mean, it's just
in 1997. I terminated more teachers by myself than the whole state combined.
Let's not get lost in the details. It's a more important topic than the tit for tat. It's good energy, though. We're going to go to break right now, and then when we come back, we're going to not only talk a little bit more about that, but talk about charter schools and vouchers and what your opinion is on that, and if that can help the education system. You're watching Law Line. Stay with us.
I feel my job is extremely important, and knowing that you've helped people out on the ground, the firefighters in particular, just the fact that they see us up there making an effort gives them a lot of comfort. In my civilian job, I fly people from point A to point B, but in the Air Force Reserve, I get to save lives. I'm Major Mark Stewart, and very proud to be a member of the Air Force Reserve.
You had the best medical care, but still your baby was born 3 months early. March of Dimes research helps save babies from prematurity. For information or to lend a hand, visit marchofdimes.com. Let's find the answers together.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent, because kids in foster care don't need perfection. They need you.
Hi, you're watching Law Line. I'm David Schnurman. Today we're talking about the school system and teacher tenure. With us we have Bryan Glass, former teacher union attorney, Betsy Combier, founder of ParentsAdvocate.org, and Michael Mazzariello, former Chief Prosecutor of New York City Board of Education. We were at a heated discussion right before the break about the tit for tat on, whether teacher tenure, there's more firings or less firings. And again, the bigger issue is not whether there's more firings or less firings, in my mind, is whether teacher tenure is necessary in the first place. Bryan, tell me a little bit about last in, first out, and where we're at with that.
Well,
what it is.
I mean, I saw the ads on television. I mean, I think it's, again, turning younger teachers against older teachers. Obviously, there's only so much money left in the system, and I think this is another method to try to get rid of tenure, another way to sort of break down the union. And then what you have now is, like, if they're going to do layoffs, the younger teachers are going to go, and they're very scared, and everyone wants to keep their job in this economy. So, you know, I think it's just a technique. I don't think it's going to pass, honestly, but I do think it's a technique to try to, you know, weaken the union and to, you know, like, look, there may be some really good people, younger teachers who are better than the older teachers, but they're probably hurting themselves by even agreeing to this, you know, because they're
agreeing to what? What is
the younger teachers by supporting the abolishing, you know, they're not going to get to those senior levels. You know, they're going to be the next ones in 3 years, and they're going to be out. So I don't think they're actually acting in their interest. Maybe short term they are, because they figure they could stay in the system. Maybe they'll be one of the lucky ones that stay in. But you have to wonder if they just
the younger teachers don't support it. A lot of the younger teachers, the probationary teachers that have been in the schools 1 year, 2 year, they send out a massive email saying, we support the senior teachers. We want them there for our mentors. Secondly of all, LIFO, last in, first out, I mean, that was used for inventory. That's how that term started. It was, you know, for tax advantages, where the oldest product would be, you know, the last to go because they wanted to sell the newer product. I mean, that's such an insult. We're dealing with people here, first of all. To me, LIFO makes no sense whatsoever. None at all.
So right now, if there were layoffs, it would be the last one's in. I mean, that's what it is now, correct?
Yes.
So are we saying that doesn't make sense, or what doesn't make sense? It doesn't make sense that the last one's the least experienced,
no,
at least time.
That doesn't make sense, because there are a lot of terrific young teachers that are really, really gung-ho. But the other side of the coin is, you can't say that all the has-beens, you know, that have been there for years are dried up. And
that's a problem.
Michael, can we agree? Can we all agree here that if there was a merit-based system that worked, so in this magic world, it was a merit-based system and had all the calibers and it was based on all the right things, if it worked the right way, wouldn't that be the best way to do things?
Oh, no, I couldn't. No, you can't. How are you going to do that? I've been to schools where you need a gun to enter the school.
Cameras.
How do you?
So if there was the question is if it goes back to in those schools, whatever you had to do to line up to make what the merit was in that school. And maybe it's not possible, but I look to running a business, you know, and if I had to run a business with tenure and you couldn't do things on a merit-based system, and the issue is for me with tenure is incentivization.
Yeah, but what you have to understand is 84,000 teachers in New York City, less than half of 1% of them teachers is a teacher issue. It's the press in this country that has blown it up. It's that banana brain in Wisconsin. It's that banana brain in New Jersey that's attacking teachers for no reason whatsoever. That's not it's a very, very small amount of teachers that they're calling incompetent latenists that have been arrested.
That's a great point.
But to come up with my problem is that I'm born and raised in the worst neighborhood in New York City. I'm born and raised where kids in second grade will tell you where to go. You know, they'll tell you right to your face, you know. Now, how do you come up with a merit-based system that is equal to this whole state? It's gigantic, from Buffalo to Rochester to Newburgh
is
to
the
New York
answer
City.
to not being able to figure that out, saying, well, then it's just tenure, and because the system's broken.
My answer would be, do your job. Tenure just needs to be tweaked a little. Do your job as an administrator.
What's a good teacher?
Well,
Tell me. Define a good teacher.
A good teacher
it hasn't been defined yet.
Well, come on.
What is it?
Listen, my wife's a good teacher. I taught for 15 years. A good teacher is someone who prepares, who loves the ideal of teaching, who loves the idea of waking up in the morning to teach young minds to go out there and to think, be innovative, be creative, to come up with the next generation of NASA astronauts and engineers, and who wants
someone
to
who's
change.
passionate about what they do,
Exactly.
and they care about the kids.
Right.
So do they deserve to be in the classroom? Yes, right?
Of course
That's
they
what
do.
you're saying.
Absolutely.
So if a teacher exactly like that, who's excited, who the kids love and adore, is suddenly said that they threw a chair at a kid and is summarily removed to a rubber room or a reassignment center or
There's a process implemented that will exonerate her.
Oh,
I'm not so sure.
well, I don't think so either.
Well, again, it goes down
I
to,
was sitting
you know
here
what?
yesterday.
It comes down to attorneys, man. You know, I'm a litigator. It comes down to attorneys. You need real attorneys, real litigators, because they're making this a real trial. And it's not a real trial. It's an administrative hearing. Okay? It's not a murder trial. It's not a misdemeanor trial. It's an administrative hearing.
You're getting on that point about the trial and the administration
it goes right to our point.
It's not just about that. It's about also the cost. I mean, there is going to be layoffs.
The
there's going to be layoffs.
Are so bloated. It's exorbitant.
And I agree with you. I was watching a documentary recently. I don't know if you've seen it on the New Jersey public school system called The Cartel.
Oh, I did.
Okay, and it says something like 87% of the costs go to the administration and not to the school and the classroom.
Last week in Albany, they said 2.5 years, over $262,000 to terminate a teacher. My leg was twitching. It was like an ice pick going through my head, because I could terminate a teacher in less than 6 months, and I'll do it for 15 grand.
So time is actually running out. We have a minute left. Brian, you were going to say something before the break just now, actually.
Well, you do raise an interesting point about the merit. You know, if there was some true merit-based way to do this. I mean, the problem with incompetency is when I first started doing incompetency cases, no one got fired for the first time incompetence. An arbitrator would say, all right, we'll give a chance in another school. Now it's almost automatic. If they write them up the right way, they're gone, whether they don't get a second chance. So, you know, the problem is that we do have to come up with some system to neutrally evaluate teachers. If there was someone who both sides agreed on was completely neutral, but you don't get that in the system now. Now you get this too much arbitrary. You call this person incompetent, and you could do it as a subterfuge for age discrimination. You could do it for any reason. You don't like the person. You know, principals have given so much power in the system now that they can call whoever they want incompetent and get them out. And we do need some solution, I think, for a merit-based. If you want to have a merit-based system, it's very hard in teaching. I don't think we've ever come up with it. We're still fighting for it, and I don't know if we'll ever come up with it.
We always have to strive to find a better way. Brian, I'm going to give you the last word. Thank you for being on the show. Betsy, thank you. Michael, thank you. We didn't get to a lot of the great subjects that I wanted to get to, but we'll just have to have another show, get into charter schools and vouchers and other areas like that. And thank you for watching Lawline. You're watching Lawline, and we'll see you next week, and you'll see it online. Thank you.
You've been watching Lawline with your host, David Schnurman. Mr. Schnurman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions about this week's program, please send an email to info@lawline.com.
Hey, yo, get off my car! Let me get that money, man. What are you doing? I got you. Give me stuff. Yo, what are you doing?
Good evening. Just pretend I'm not here.
Yo, can I help you?
Are you selling drugs?
There's a better way to find information about drugs, so you can talk to your kids. Get the tools at drugfree.org from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.